Hey everyone, I'm Mark with Create and Kaptivate, and I'm here today with my Mini 4 Pro. And I'm going to be demonstrating one of the new features we got with this latest firmware update, and that's the ability to fly the Mini 4 Pro or the R3 with the Motion Controller 2 and either the Goggles 2 or the Goggles Integra. Now, before you'll be able to get all of these things connected, you'll have to update the firmware on everything. That includes the drone, the motion controller, and the goggles. So to update the firmware on the drone, you can simply connect it with your regular controller, whether that's the RC2 or the RCN2, and use that to update the firmware on the drone. For the goggles and the motion controller, I just connected my goggles to my phone and used the DJI Fly app to update the firmware on both the goggles and the motion controller. Once you have all the firmwares updated, now you can get everything connected. Now, to get everything connected, you'll first want to pair the drone to the goggles because you won't be able to pair the motion controller to the drone until you've done that first. So I'm going to get the goggles on to show you how to do that. Now, you'll want to power up both the drone and the goggles. And once the goggles are powered up, you'll go into this main menu and select status and then switch. And now you'll see a list of aircraft to select from. Currently, I'm connected to the Avata. So I'm going to go down to Mini 4 Pro, and I'll select that. Then I'll hit switch to confirm. And now I get this notification that it's switching, and this will just take a moment. Now I'll confirm the check is complete. And now my goggles and drone are paired, and I'll see the drone camera view in the goggles. So now I just need to pair the motion controller to the drone, and to do that, I'll power on the motion controller and then press and hold the power button until it starts beeping, and then I'll press and hold the power button on the drone until it goes into pair mode. And now this will just take a moment, and then the two will be paired. Now everything's connected and you're ready to fly. So I'm just going to quickly go over taking off and landing with the motion controller. So in order to take off, you'll first need to start the motors, and you can do that by double tapping the orange lock button. Once the motors are started, you can press and hold the lock button, and the drone will take off. When the drone is in the air, if you press and hold the lock button, it will initiate a landing. Now, you can also get the drone to take off by holding up on the joystick, and get the drone to land by holding down on the joystick. All right, now I'm going to show you some of the controls with the drone in front of the camera so you can see how it reacts to the different controls. Now, the first thing I want to show you is if you press the orange lock button, it will hold the drone in place and it will just hover there so you can move the controller around, you can do whatever you need to do. And then when you're ready to start flying the drone again, you can press the orange lock button, and now you have control of the drone again. So to get the drone to fly forward, you just squeeze the trigger and the drone will fly forward. The faster or the further you squeeze the trigger, the faster the drone will fly. And if you want to fly backwards, you can push the trigger away from you and the drone will fly in reverse. Now, you can also get the drone to fly straight up and straight down with the joystick. So if I hold it up, the drone flies up. If I hold the joystick down, the drone flies down. And you can get it to fly side to side. So if I hold it left, the drone flies left. And if I hold it right, the drone will fly right. Now, to get the drone to turn or rotate, I can just rotate the controller in the direction I want the drone to move. So I'll rotate the controller to the left and the drone starts to rotate to the left. The further I move it, the faster the drone will rotate. And then if I move back to a neutral position, the drone stops. And if I rotate the controller to the right, the drone will move to the right and then back to neutral and it stops. Now, I'll get the drone a little closer to the camera. If I point the controller downwards, the gimbal will tilt downwards. And if I point the controller upward, the gimbal will tilt upward. So those are the basic motion controls. Now I'm just gonna pause the drone and I'm gonna go into the goggles and I'm gonna turn on head tracking so I can show you the head tracking controls. So now with head tracking enabled, I'm still controlling the direction the drone flies with the motion controller. It's just the camera view that tracks my head movements. So you can see if I turn my head to the left, the drone will turn to the left. If I turn my head to the right, the drone will turn to the right. Get it back to center. If I look down, the gimbal tilts down. And if I look up, the gimbal will tilt up. So that's the head tracking. I'm just gonna pause the drone and turn that off. So those are all the basic drone controls. So now I'm gonna take it up and do some flying around. All right, before I start flying around, I just wanna quickly go through some of the settings. Now I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this because a lot of these are standard settings that you'll probably already be used to from flying the Mini 4 Pro or the Air 3. So first, if I press up on the 5D button on the goggles, that brings up my camera settings. You can also access the camera settings by pressing the thumb wheel on the motion controller. And then by using the 5D button or the thumb wheel, you can scroll through the different settings. Now I'm gonna leave my camera mode in auto, so to get out of here, I can press the back button on the goggles or press and hold the thumb wheel on the controller. Now right below the thumb wheel, there's a shutter record button, and by pressing that, you can stop and start recording and take a photo, and if you press and hold it, it will switch between photo and video mode. Now, if I press down on the 5D button, it brings up this menu. And here I can enable and disable head tracking, which I'll demonstrate shortly, but right now I'm gonna get out of this menu. Now, if I press the 5D button, it brings up this sort of main menu. And while I'm here, I wanna point something out. You can see I have that warning, not using bound device. If I select status, it gives me a little more information, but basically it's because I'm using the motion controller and not the bound controller, which is my RC2. And it says I can still fly 3 times. You start out with 5 times, but once you run out, once you've flown the 5 times, it will give you a flight prohibited message and it won't allow you to take off. But then all you need to do is power on your drone with the bound controller and allow them to connect, and then you'll be allowed to fly with the unbound device another 5 times. So I just wanted to show you that. Now, if I go down to settings, a lot of these are fairly standard settings, but I want to go into control because there's a few things in there I want to show you. Now, first off, if you want to change your rates, you can go into your motion controller and go over to gain tuning, and now you can set things like your max lateral flight speed, your max vertical speed, your max forward speed, and your max backward speed for both normal and sport mode. Now, also in control, you have gimbal mode, and currently I'm in FPV mode. You can also select follow mode, but for the majority of this flight, I'm gonna leave it in FPV mode, but I'll demonstrate follow mode here shortly. Now, also on the controller, you have a mode button right below the orange lock button, and that will allow you to switch between normal and sport mode. So in normal mode, you'll have the full obstacle avoidance, but once you switch to sport mode, you'll get this message, obstacle avoidance unavailable. So just be aware, in sport mode, you won't have your obstacle avoidance. So I'm gonna start out by flying around in normal mode. All right, now to start flying around, I can just squeeze the trigger and the drone will start to fly forward. If I rotate the controller to the left, the drone will turn to the left. If I point it up, the drone will go upwards. If I point it down, the drone will fly downward. And you can see the white circle in the center of the screen, and that kind of acts as a guide to show you where the drone is flying towards. And by rotating and tilting the controller, you can kind of aim that circle where you want to fly to. and the drone will just fly there. Got a helicopter flying over. He's nowhere close to where I'm at though. So I'm just gonna fly around a little bit. It's really quite intuitive using this controller, and it doesn't take long before I was really comfortable flying around with it. And with this controller, you can really do a lot of things that you wouldn't normally do with the regular controller. Like fly through these trees, but just line up the circle with where you want to go, and the drone will fly there. So now, one thing you'll notice, as I'm turning from side to side, the horizon also tilts from side to side, giving you that banking effect in the corners. Whoa, that was a little crazy. So I just want to pause it here quickly, and I'm going to turn on follow mode just to show you what that looks like. So in follow mode, it will lock the horizon. So instead of that banking motion, you get more of a panning motion as you're turning. So I'm just gonna fly around a little bit in follow mode just so you can see what it's like. You know, if you're trying to capture some stable footage, this might actually help stabilize it a bit, but you're not gonna get that FPV look. But you'll see the horizon stays fairly level even as I'm turning back and forth. All right, I'm gonna pause the drone and I'm gonna switch it back into FPV mode. And now I'm actually going to switch it into sport mode. So you'll see I get the obstacle avoidance unavailable message. So just be aware of that. Now we can fly a little bit faster. So I'm going to dive down again and fly over top of me. There's some people coming, so didn't want to go over there. Just gonna cut through these trees again. Get it lined up. So now I'm going to show you head tracking. So I'll pause the drone again, and I'm going to turn on the head tracking mode. So now with head tracking enabled, you're still controlling where the drone is flying with the motion controller. It's just the camera view that will track the head movement. So now you can see I can fly straight ahead, but I can look off to the side, or I can look down. I can fly up and look down. The one thing I like about head tracking is you have a much better awareness of your surroundings. I often feel flying around without it that sometimes when I'm turning or going downwards, I can't really see what's below me or beside me. But with head tracking, I can just kind of look around, see what's around me. So I'll just fly around like this for a bit. Now I can do a dive. If I look down, look like I'm really diving down. That helicopter coming back. Just stay down low. He's not close to me anyways. Sounds a lot closer than it is. You know, head tracking would be really good for exploring, because you can really just look around, you know, see what's around. You know, with a little bit of practice, you could probably come up with some pretty creative shots too. Anyways, I'm gonna pause it and just take head tracking off. Also, one thing I wanna mention, no matter what mode you're in, when you have head tracking on, your obstacle avoidance will be disabled. So just keep that in mind. All right. Now, there was one other thing that I wanted to show you. So I'm just gonna kind of fly out over here a little bit. And that is, with the motion controller, you still have the return to home function. So I'm gonna get up here and I'm just gonna kind of rotate around so I can see where home is. And now, if you hold the mode button on the controller, that will initiate the return to home. So I'm just gonna let it fly back. Let's see how it does. I can hear it above me. Pretty close. Oh. Well, there you have it. The Mini 4 Pro, the Motion Controller 2, and the Goggles Integra. If you have the option to try this out, I highly suggest you do it. It's a whole lot of fun, and it's a totally different experience than flying your drone with the normal controller. And maybe with a little bit of practice, you could even capture some pretty unique footage. But if you just want to go out and fly around and have some fun, this is a great option. And that's all I have for this video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.